Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan and I aren't as happy as we may seem at the start of the season. We are all smiley, but that's just because we've had 10 minutes of dog chat. So we had to get ourselves in the mood for this because before we logged on, I've watched the highlights back of yesterday and I've fallen into another bout of depression. Listen,
Oh,
Dan, I know we can't beat around the bush here, can we? Aston Villa have gone 4 games in the Premier League without scoring a goal and without winning a game, which I don't know which is more. I mean, obviously you have to score a goal to win a game, so that's obviously like the big thing here. Um, in isolation, this result's okay. I think this
yeah,
is where I'm at with it, right? A
yeah,
0-0
yeah,
at
yeah.
Everton, very buoyant. They're high on the new stadium. Jack Grealish, Remontada, Player of the Month, Iliman and Jai. All these factors in isolation, going to the Hill Dickinson Stadium, which I just almost called Goodison Park. This is unreal PR for Hill Dickinson, but
It
this is.
really is.
Do you know, like, to put your name on a stadium like that when it's first built, that's what it's going
I
to be
know.
known as forever. So that's genius from them, right? To go to the Hill Dickinson and not to lose and not to concede is good. But it's the 3 games that came before this,
hmm
which kind of leaves us with somewhat of a sour taste here, mate.
I think it's the international break as well, right?
Yeah,
Where you kind of had the buoyancy of deadline day, and Rodgers looked really good for England, and I didn't think the Andorra game was great, but you had all the love in for Villa Park and stuff like that, and generally considering the start to the season, um, there was, dare I say, some glimmers of optimism
absolutely.
amongst all of this, which I think if we go from the start, the team sheets kind of came out, and there wasn't a tremendous amount of love for that. Understandably, Martinez back in, there probably weren't the changes that. Look, I don't think we expected, like particularly Sancho. The last game of football he played was the Conference League final, so I think everyone expected him to be like a little bit way off, but. Um, yeah, it was kind of same old with the team sheet. And again, back in those wide positions that, and it was, I think, Bogard was, I actually thought he was probably one of our better, if not our best performance, to be honest with you. But like kind of him being in the lineup, and it was just a bit of a reminder of, yeah, these new signings, as exciting as they might be, they might take a little bit of time. And I actually thought the first half was okay. I thought it was okay. Like I wasn't like totally despondent after the first 45 minutes, but as the game kind of crept on, that the kind of the anticipation around that first goal is just creeping on and creeping on. And by the time we got to like 70 minutes, I was just like, it's not gonna happen. There just wasn't much of a hope that it was going to come. To be honest with you, you were kind of relying on a set piece or something like that to try and nick a goal. We just looked so far away from being able to put something together. Rodgers looked miles away from the player that he was in Serbia. So yeah, um, it's not it's not all doom and gloom, as you say. Mate, I felt the same way about the Newcastle result.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
isolation with 10 men, like that's a good point.
It
And
was.
to go to Everton with the way that they've started the season, and given the way that we kind of wrapped up before the international break, again, I think it's a good point. But it's the fact that we haven't scored. That stat going around that I think it's the top 7 divisions of English football, the only side that hasn't scored a goal yet, which is pretty crazy. Which is pretty crazy. You kind of feel that, yeah, a step away from the Premier League might be a good thing, but yeah, mate, it's another tough day. Unai looked probably as troubled as I've seen him in his press match, not in terms of like his temperament, because we know he can be a little bit spiky, but just like in himself, his demeanor, like he looks really quite worn down by this, and not in a critical way necessarily, but like he doesn't have the answers. Like he does, just like he seemed completely like dejected at the full time whistle, as if to kind of say, we've worked on something here and this hasn't worked. What are we going to do next? And we don't have a lot of time to figure that out, as you say, because we go midweek in the Carabao or at Brentford. So yeah, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing. A bit of rotation, a bit of new life. Maybe you give Elliot a run. Maybe you see what kind of he can do. Maybe you give Guess on a start. Who knows? But yeah, we've got to find a solution pretty quick.
This is where the Arsenal fans crawl out of the woodwork, isn't it, mate? And say, "We told you so." And we can't sit on this podcast and speak disingenuously about Unai or Villa or the situation. I think the one thing that we knew right from the start, mate, what we were getting in terms of this possession based style from Unai, and I don't want to say that it's like wearing thin, although it very much does feel like that. It's possession for possession's sake, right? It's literally the most pointless stat in the game. And, I was kind of saying to the boys in the ground, like, recently it's felt like we're setting up games with the mindset of we don't want to lose this rather than let's go and win this. Now, I look at this Everton aren't without their injury struggles as well. No Mikalenko, you've got James Garner filling in at left back. Tell me why John McGinn's starting on that right hand side when they've got a central midfielder playing left back. Why are we not attacking him with some pace? Why are we not putting Daniel Marlin out there? Why are we not putting Harvey Elliott out there? Even we've complained about Rodgers playing on the right. Give me Rodgers versus Garner all day of the week. Let's see if something can happen there. Like, at least to me, and Unai Emery will forget more about football than I'll ever know. That seems to me like a bit of common sense. And Guinea obviously shuffled into the middle when Yuri came off, and looked a hell of a lot better for doing that as well, by the way. But we're in this kind of phase of Unai Emery where the players, are they despondent to what's going on? It looks a little bit like it. You've got people. This is the one thing that I feel like we just have to address straight away, mate. You've got people going, oh yeah, but because something doesn't seem right in the dressing room, does it? You've got Tyrone and Guinea coming out and speaking on the sales of JJ, and then obviously like the failed Martinez move and Mings's Instagram post after after the last game very much seemed like a bit of an indirect shot at Emmy. Those who want to be here will be, all that kind of stuff. Something doesn't seem right, and then you've got people on Twitter going, "Oh, you don't know how the squad are reacting to JJ. JJ's sale. That's clearly rustled feathers." And whilst I absolutely do not dispute that, listen, you're not going to find a guy more empathetic to the soft stuff when it comes to these footballers. I give these guys so much more credit than they're probably even due or owed. Not just Villa, just footballers in general. You won't find a softer touch on footballers than me, I promise you. But you cannot tell me that Jacob Ramsey's move to Newcastle has stopped our centre halves and fullbacks from learning how to pass forward in the build up. It's despicable. It's absolutely
Yeah.
despicable. And Tyrone and Esri, they've been great. I think Dean, you're getting what you get, and Cash, I feel like a broken record. Some of the shit he gets online is just a joke, really, if I'm being totally honest. And I don't think that individually they've been that bad. But what is absolutely killing Villa, not only is this slow sort of possession, but in the build up starts with the defense, right? And the two problems we've got is we've either got the goalkeeper, whether that's Emmy or Bezo, who fin it long to nobody, and then we're not even winning second or third balls, or you've got Mings and Concert. And again, I'm not digging them out, but you've got these guys that are dawdling in possession. Let's just get the ball forward a bit quicker, play with a bit of purpose. It's so infuriating. Like, here's the thing, right? Whether people listen to this or not, who knows? We're a couple of days late. Our core audience will find this and will know we're always glass half full. We always have been, we always will be. But it's just basic stuff, mate, that is so obvious to see. And again, like, you can say what you want about JJ leaving, how that's unbalanced the squad, all that. It doesn't affect their ability to make a forward pass.
No, I do. I do totally agree with you. I think the one thing is that you've got this situation, but all of the players understand the situation that the club is in, right? So whilst the JJSL has obviously upset some players at the club, but I would like to think that they understand the position the club is in. And, this isn't if we'd have told Jacob Ramsey 10 years ago So Newcastle, yeah, this would have raised eyebrows, but the position that the club is in makes it necessary, unfortunately, and the players will know that. But yeah, I do think that this is. I mean, I feel like I've probably said this on every podcast so far this season, mate. But the next game is so important because you are already starting to see, as you say, the blame game come into play. I mean,
Yeah.
Matt Cash is always the scapegoat, but I'm seeing a lot of, Rodgers looks disinterested. He doesn't want to be here, like type
Well,
chatter.
there's been a massive turn on Rodgers, and
Yeah.
it's no longer like the vocal minority that you can expect it from either. It is a large portion of the fan base now that are losing faith in Morgan.
Yeah, yeah, and this is where you start to get into a dangerous place because particularly after the whole how the fan base has turned on Emmy, and look, like you and I came on the pod after and were like, fan bases we are ourselves included, fickle. And all it took was a good performance at Everton, and he's back in the good books.
And
And
look at it.
I think we're already at the very least halfway there. He puts in a good game, taps the badge when he walks over to the fan bases, like the fans, sorry, in the away end at the end of the game, and all of a sudden you are halfway there. Say Brentford on Tuesday night goes to penalties and he saves a few, like if he's in goal, do you know what I mean? And then like all is sorted basically. And so I know that these things can turn around quickly. Same with Rodgers. If he goes and scores on Tuesday night, kisses the Villa badge and wheels away, then we're fine. But we are on a slippery slope here, and that's where I worry. In that, I think Unai has got so much credit in the bank that he can keep this going for a long time. I think we would have to drop off massively for anyone to kind of start turning on Unai. It's a serious level, but there are players whereby you do already feel like the tide is starting to turn, and this early on in the season, with so much football to play, is yeah. As I say, once you start to get to that point so quickly, it's very, very hard to turn back from. It's very, very hard to turn back from. And I do worry that, to be sat here in September, we're scapegoating players and it's the blame game and it's player X doesn't want to be here, player Y is upset, blah, 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 all of that kind of stuff. That's the worrying part. That's the worrying part, is that the atmosphere and the perception of it all is 90% of that. I'm really convinced by that. I think the general levels of positivity at the club have been such that in recent years it's enabled us to kind of, get through some choppy waters. Maybe it's never been this bad. But yeah, it's a line that I fear that we're starting to cross, that, particularly if you are Rodgers, and you are starting to see that stuff, it's just not, it doesn't create a great environment to kind of like operate in.
Yeah.
And so I hope we manage to stave that off. But that's the most concerning thing for me, mate. That is that I think the results on the pitch are one thing. I think we all knew it had the potential to be a tricky season. I don't think the surprise whilst it's been poor, I don't think it's surprised too many people, but there probably hasn't been the reaction that I maybe anticipated at the start of the season, where it's probably not been as understanding as I maybe anticipated it would be.
Yeah, and you can see that, mate. It's the little things like Bologna at home's gone to members, and there's thousands of tickets available. Like, for whatever reason, whether it's obviously everybody's got their own, whether it's personal, financial, whatever issues, but and I appreciate it's only the Europa League, it's not the Champions League, but like champagne problem to have, right? In terms of football, we're in the Europa League. You couldn't, I don't think Champions League tickets were going to members last season. Not for these, like, not
No,
for
I don't think
the first game, or like,
yeah.
so like there is, a lot of apathy. Just the vibes around the club at the moment aren't great, and you see it with Ollie as well. People know where we stand on Ollie, but like, are we really digging out a striker for not scoring when he's not getting service? Is like that where we're at right now? That's what I'm really struggling with. How many chances has Ollie had? I mean, there's about 3 through balls that if Morgan could have pulled them off, Ollie is at least 1-on-1 with Pickford, and you'd like to think that one of them results in a shot on target. They're the kind of situations that you and I would probably put our house on Ollie scoring in. So, there's like little things, and like, you alluded to it a bit earlier, mate. Lineup comes out, you see Buendia. I know you didn't. I'm not putting words into your mouth here, but you know, like a lot of people, oh, Buendía started. One of our better players in the game.
Mhm.
Absolutely one of our better players, and then he gets hauled off. It's like, you know, but Buendía, Bogard, Martinez, my three players in the matches. My three. I thought Konsa and Mings did what they needed to do as well. Um, you know,
I think the thing, not to butt in, mate, but I think the problem is with if Buendia is not necessarily the player, is what Buendia represents. Like he is, in a nutshell, the problem that we have with the squad. In that this is a player who we very clearly wanted to get rid of 6 months ago, that we have bought like replacements for, not just low for like in someone like Harvey Elliott recently, but like Evan Gesson and like Daniel Marlers and like other players that can play against the front line. But like the fact that he's like still starting like 4 or 5, was it 3 or 4 games into the season? Sorry. I think that's and I agreed. Like I thought he played well, but like I think he is pretty indicative of the problems that we're having, right? And that like if we're seeing him start, particularly what's weird is that I read a really good piece from Jacob Tansworth after the deadline day that kind of broke down the transfer approach at Villa, and it was like
yeah,
Emery calls the shots. Like this would start to make more sense if these were Monchi signings and Unai like didn't fancy them. That would explain the whole Daniel Marlin thing in like an instant, wouldn't it? But what we're being told is that, and reliably told, I think it's fair to say, is that Emery calls the shots on these guys, and he's the one that's making the decisions on who Aston Villa signs and who they don't. And then when you kind of, I saw a breakdown, and it was very simple of like who signed each of the
mate.
players.
Yeah,
In our starting 11. I think
Emi Martinez,
one, which is Tielemans
and Rodgers.
and Rodgers.
Tielemans and Rodgers. So you, Emi Martinez, Dean Smith, Matty Cash, Dean Smith, Ezri Konsa, Tyrone Mings, Dean Smith, Luca Dean, Steven Gerrard, Lamar Bogard, Academy, Unai Emery, John McGinn, Steve Bruce.
Steve Bruce.
That's how far back we're going, okay? And that's not a shot at John, absolutely, because he's our club captain. Morgan Rogers, Unai Emery, Emi Buendia, Dean Smith. Didn't get to use him though, did he? Because he got sacked. Ollie Watkins, Dean Smith. And then you look at the bench, mate. Okay, Gessand, Elliott, Lindelof, Marlon, all those that came on are Unai Emery signings. You've got Marco Bizzo, Ian Matson, Pau Torres, Jadon Sancho. All of these guys are Emery signings.
Right. On the bench.
And they're all on the bench. And like, does this look different with a fully fit squad? Arguably, but okay, then you stick Kamara in, Steven Gerrard signing. Onana, as you and I are both incredibly high on Amadou, mate. We really, really do think that was, a deal that was worth making. But Amadou doesn't get into our best 11 if everybody's fit.
Yeah.
He doesn't. So it's like, and like, I was just having this conversation with my dad at dinner about Pau Torres. Like, again, you won't find two blokes as high on Pau Torres as Dan and I. You just won't. But what a fall off.
Yeah.
What a fall off, mate. And the fact that he's, and like again, it's no disrespect to Tyrone because he is probably comfortably the best defender at the club. Certainly left-sided defender. I think it's probably fair that I caveat that with. But the fact that a player we signed in the Championship is keeping out our nearly £30 million continental Spanish international, all singing, all dancing, 7-iron, 5-iron, 9-iron, left foot Pau Torres. What does that say? What does that say about where we're at? It feels like we're very stagnant. All of those issues are very well documented, and it's like, okay, there were offers for Buendia, right? Whether it was loan or permanent, Leeds, Stuttgart, bunch of other teams interested. We couldn't bring in anyone to replace him, so we've had to keep him. That's where we're at, right? Mm-hmm. We're having to keep and play and start. And again, like I don't mean for this to be disrespectful in any way to Emi Buendia, because again, I'm high on all of these guys. I really love every single player in our squad. And anybody who listens to this podcast religiously will know that I love this squad. That's not right, mate. That is not right.
It is, I think we spoke about that. When you look at that back line and it's like Martinez, Cash, Konsa, Mings, Digne, could be taken from 2026 to like 2022, right? Like that back, it spans like seasons and managers, and like there's nothing wrong with any of these players, but it's just like kind of like the fact it hasn't been freshened up is just
Look at Man
just
City, mate. Look at
yeah.
Man City. The some
Yeah.
they've had that they've lost iconic players in De Bruyne, and and they've had to reinvent. And of course, the jury will still be out there, but all great teams do reinvent, mate. Look at Liverpool. We thought it was the end of the world when Coutinho left.
Mhm.
Coutinho's bankrolled their success over the past 6 years.
Well, won the league and rebuilt, right?
Yeah, and
Well, and now when looking, it's like same animal, different beast.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's the crazy thing is we have signed players,
yeah, yeah. No, we have absolutely. Yeah,
and it's weird that we kind of sit here now and yeah, I mean Daniel Marlin I think is the example whereby it's like surely he just goes now. Like we're how a season and a half in now, and it's like still not happening, and it's just the kind of you're just waiting for that 15 million euro move to PSV, and
yeah, yeah.
it's kind of like where are we at with him now? I don't want to come in, but that that's the weird part with me. That's the weird part with me is it's like the lineup. I like all the players. I don't have a problem with the lineup, but it's more just like what it symbolizes. And I felt like Buendia is the prime example of this. Is like a player that, as you say, we clearly wanted to get rid of. We have had to, they've twisted our arm by through PSR and to a player where like not only do we have to keep Emi Buendia, but he's like now a pretty like solid pick for being in the
Yeah,
team.
he was great. He was great. Listen, he was our best. I thought he was our best player. I thought he was great.
100%, 100%, and as I say, he's I thought Bogard was our best player, but you don't want him. You like that's not how for where we want to be. Lamar Bogard needs to be 15, 20 minutes cup game type of player. There's no disrespect to his ability, but like if we want to be serious in the position that we're competing in the Champions League, he's probably not someone that can do it Wednesday, Thursday at like an elite level like Abubakar Kamara's can. And that's no slight on him, but yeah, I do think it all stems from there. I think the opportunity to rotate is potentially a good thing. Just like experiment, try something new. Against an opposition that we've already been able to feel out this season. But yeah, if we do that and we don't get a bloody goal, yeah, it's a trip to Sunderland next weekend, which is tough. But when you're in a position like this, mate, any game, it doesn't matter. We could have Burnley at home, Leeds at home, Man City at home, whoever. Like, there's no team in the league that you'd look at right now and be like, oh, thank God.
Genuinely, mate, where does the win come? Brentford away, Sunderland away, Bologna at home, Fulham at home, Feyenoord away, Burnley at home, Tottenham away, Eagles away, Man City at home, Liverpool away. Where does the win come?
It has to be before the European. We can't go into Europe without winning a game. Jesus Christ, because then like the focus completely shifts in terms of like Europe just becomes an inconvenience. Because as much as we as fans can sit here and say, oh yeah, we'll prioritize Europe, we'll make a run in the Europa League, the club will never do that. The club will never take a if we finish 17th and win the Europa League a la Spurs last season, the fact that they sacked their manager after that season tells you just how little squads like clubs will tolerate like losing priority in the league to prioritize a cup run. The club would rather, if it meant dropping 2 places in the league, I don't think they would prioritize a cup run. And so it has to come before Europe, because all of a sudden, to go to De Kuip in the first game stinks if you've not scored a goal, let alone won a game.
Yeah.
So it has to come before that, and
especially as we're favourites, to have us at 21%. To win the highest of teams in the competition, which it's like, have you opted? Do you watch the games? Do you like? I don't know. Like I look at a lot of these teams that are in the Europa League, mate, and it's going to be bloody tough.
Do you want an Opta stat?
Give me an Opta stat.
So this is the first time we failed to score in our opening 4 league games to a season in Aston Villa history. Meanwhile, We're the fifth side to do so in the Premier League after Sheffield Wednesday in 93-94, Newcastle United in 05-06, Swansea City in 2011-2012. And do you remember that Frank de Boer Crystal Palace side?
Oh my God, yeah.
They did it in 2017-18. They're the last team to do this.
Didn't he lose his job like the next game? They only actually
Yeah, so I think I think he didn't. I think they went 6 or 7 games without scoring, lost every game, and got sacked. But I mean, yeah, you're in pretty. How many? Well, I think Palace were the only club to survive the drop in those seasons. And look, I don't think we're going to get relegated, but I thought that was pretty crazy. That kind of much ridiculed Frank de Boer, Crystal Palace, probably referenced as like the worst manager maybe in Premier League history. Yeah. That's the kind of company we're keeping, and yeah, as much as people, I don't think the Carabao is at all the priority right now. Getting dumped out the cup as well alongside this, and going out there would, yeah.
It's optics, mate, and it's optics.
Yeah, it is all that, and that kind of brings me full circle to my original point about like the sentiment amongst the fan base and stuff like that. Is like, yeah, if you get dumped out the cups in your first game in September, alongside the start, the pressure mounts and mounts and gets bigger and gets bigger, and that's. Yeah, I do think we've got to treat it as a completely clean slate, which it is. Try something new, take a free hit, mix it up, reshuffle the pack, and try and send something new out there. I think as long as the fans see that, I think that will go a long way. But another kind of lack of rotation, if we stick with it and try and hope that the cup run, cup win in the cup, lights something, and it doesn't, that's where I think all hell will break loose. I think people will be willing to, if we go out, but we really shuffle the deck, try something new and experiment. I think that maybe gets tolerated a little more, but I suppose we'll see.
Marco Bizzo. Yeah, that's what we will see on Tuesday. But it's Brentford, man. They're scrappy. Like, I know you watched their game last night.
Yeah.
You can argue, is the Carabao Cup really like the be all or end all for Brentford? But for Keith Andrews, surely with all the pressure that he's been under, surviving is the most important thing, which I think they'll do comfortably after the past couple of performances and results, and especially that one against Chelsea. But if you go and play Brent, obviously going out to a Premier League team, it's not the worst if you're gonna have to go out of the cup. But to kind of counter your point, mate, if we play, if it's Bezo, if it's Lindelof, if it's Gesand, Marlon, Elliot, if it's these guys and we still lose.
Yeah, it's a good point.
But these are the guys that we're looking at and saying, come on, Unai, give us start your players. We don't want to have to wait 6 weeks to see our new signings. So it's tough, innit? It is really tough. This is probably the most dour Villa podcast there's been for at least since the Gerrard era, mate.
It is that we've done a lot of upset and frustration. I'm outright confused. That's what this is. I'm not. We've been pissed off. We've been upset. I'm not. I am just and kind of that's how I felt Unai looked, right? It's just this is just all a bit weird.
I think weird is
that would be the one word that I would in a nutshell summarizes everything. Everything's just a bit weird right now.
It is, and we almost this game could be such a blessing, but it also has the potential to be that banana skin. I'm not going to ask you for a score prediction, mate, because I think after the 30 minutes that we've just had, that would just be really unfair. So I'm gonna leave that to the audience. Get your predictions in the comments down below. You guys have endured that, so you can give us the prediction this week. I think that's only fair. But we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully we'll be talking either Tuesday night or Wednesday at some point about a win. And a goal would be nice, mate, wouldn't it? Hey, 2-1 loss, I'm going to be happy.
Oh, just to score! I saw the goal graphic for the first time in the women's team. They still lost, but they scored against Chelsea, and it's really nice. The little goal video. I really want to see it. And there's that video that we put out in pre-season where they're getting the players to guess who will score our first goal of the season. So it gets retweeted onto my timeline every time we don't win. So yeah, just for the sake of the admin. Let's just score a goal. You know,
Yeah.
and I do think like once we do that, if we can do this and just win a game, score a goal, I honestly think we start rolling from there. But yeah, we're just in a bit of a funk right now. And it sounds so easy, but a goal and a win would, if it's 1-0, if it comes to someone's ass, it doesn't matter. A goal and a win would just go a million miles right now.
Do you know? Like, I can't remember the exact words or whatever, but Kashi was asked after the game about like the lack of scoring. He's like, "Well, it's not. It's like we're like trying not to score. Like, we're trying to score goals. Like, we've done it. We know we can score goals because we scored loads the past couple of seasons. So, it isn't for a lack of trying, and especially on Kashi's end when he goes and scores two bloody worldies for the Polish
Yeah.
during their break. So,
Men's as well scored an unreal goal, didn't they?
like
They can do it.
they can do it. They can do it. You just got to believe. But guys, let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Give us your score predictions for the Brentford game. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. If you listen on Apple and Spotify, follow, download, share. It helps us out more than you can know. Like, comment, subscribe, and up the Villa.